You're listening to Red Pill 78. I am the corruption detector, and this is your Red Pill News. Wanted to start off today with a little tweet from my good friend Methods, and it is a retweet of the president's tweet. And looks like President Trump is talking about treason again. Look at that. And side note, he also has a misspelling. Let's take a closer look. Such a great victory in court yesterday on the Russia hoax. The greatest political scam in the history of our country. Treason. Hopefully, the Attorney General of the United States and all of those working with him will find out in great detail what happened. Never again. All right, so we have an extra E instead of an A. What could that mean? Well, if you'll remember from this drop, 1559, Q telling us about Viva versus Vive. Vive la Resistance. It should have been Vive la Resistance. Instead, it was Viva la Resistance. Very strange, but looks like that was their code for the resistance movement that they were part of. Could this be, once again, President Trump showing us this extra E instead of the A, just like in his tweet, where he shows us general spelled with an E instead of an A? Who knows? We'll be taking a look at this and more, and we'll be right back after a quick word from my sponsor. It only takes one major disaster to remind us how fragile life is and our systems are. Recent earthquakes in California have done just that for many people. Life can change in a flash, and all too often it does. When emergencies strike, are you prepared for the days without electricity and stores being damaged or closed? Well, if not, today's a good day to make a plan and prepare for those disasters. I've done this myself, and I started with building a food storage plan. I trust and use My Patriot Supply, and I think you should too. This month, they're running a sale price for a 2-week emergency food kit on my special website, preparewithredpill78.com. You can save 40% when you click the link in the description below and order it today. It gets shipped discreetly to your home. These 2-week emergency food kits include breakfast, lunches, dinners, and they last up to 25 years in storage. Preparing for emergencies with My Patriot Supply is the smart thing to do, and if you do it now, you'll save 40% at preparewithredpill78.com. That's preparewithredpill78.com. All right, for all of you who did not get an opportunity or did not feel like watching the Democratic debate last night, have no fear. We've got the top moments from that debate last night. The first night of the second 2019 Democratic debate on CNN had some wild moments. We're not going to bother with the moments the candidates or the CNN audience liked. We want to point out some of the crazier moments that will probably be overlooked by the media. Here are 5 examples. Number 5, Marianne Williamson. While talking about Democrats taking corporate donations, Williamson invoked a joke from Seinfeld and suggested that voters are going yada 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 right over them. Well, let's take a listen.
But for politicians, including my fellow candidates, who themselves have taken tens of thousands and in some cases hundreds of thousands of dollars from these same corporate donors, to think that they now have the moral authority to say, we're going to take them on, I don't think the Democratic Party should be surprised that so many Americans believe yada, yada, yada. It is time for us to start over with people who have not taken donations from any of these corporations and can say with real moral authority, that is over. We are going to establish public funding for federal campaigns. That's what we need to stand up to.
All right, Marianne Williamson invoking Seinfeld. Number 4, Pete Buttigieg. When the subject of the minimum wage came up, Pete Buttigieg, who frequently implies that he is more Christian than anyone else, suggested that you are not a decent Christian if you don't support raising the minimum wage. Let's take a listen.
The minimum wage is just too low. And so-called conservative Christian senators right now in the Senate are blocking a bill to raise the minimum wage when Scripture says that whoever oppresses the poor taunts their maker.
Well, Pete Buttigieg scolding us for not being Christian enough. And then number 3, Don Lemon. CNN host Don Lemon was included as a moderator in this debate for some reason. He is not a journalist. He is an opinion guy, and he absolutely hates President Trump. He made that crystal clear with this question, and take a note of the wording.
What do you say to those Trump voters who prioritize the economy over the president's bigotry?
Oh, there's some bait right there. Number 2, John King. John King is another CNN host, and he said something factual in his post-debate analysis. He suggested that this field of candidates is further left than any Democrat who has ever won the presidency, including the last one. Let's go ahead and take a listen.
What Senator Sanders was just describing, what Senator Warren is describing, has not happened in our lifetime. That a Democrat can run in a national election to be for Medicare for all, for free college tuition, maybe for reparations, for giving health care to undocumented immigrants, a host of liberal proposals, way to the left of the last Democrat who won, Barack Obama, way left to Bill Clinton, the Democrat to win before that. My first campaign was Dukakis. He was not as liberal as many of these.
Yeah, these guys are in trouble, and they have absolutely no idea. Finally, Elizabeth Warren, when asked a direct question about whether her health care plan would raise taxes on the middle class, Warren refused to give a straight answer. What a surprise. Let's take a look at that.
Just a point of clarification in 15 extra seconds. Would you raise taxes on the middle class to pay for Medicare for all, offset obviously by the elimination of insurance premiums? Yes or no?
Costs will go up for billionaires and go up for corporations. For middle-class families, total costs will go down.
All right. She is totally lying right there. Did you see, as soon as he asked her that question, her breath increased by magnitudes. She started heaving. She knew exactly what was happening, and she knew that she was going to dodge the question. There is absolutely no possible way that these Democrats are going to be able to give Medicare for all, including all of the illegals that are going to be streaming across the border, and still not be able to raise taxes. Incredible. Now, as a bonus, Bernie Sanders got louder and louder as the night went on, and Tim Ryan commented on it. Let's go ahead and take a look at that.
They could bail out the crooks on Wall Street, so please don't tell me that we cannot take on the fossil fuel industry. You don't have to yell.
Oh, that was a good one. I like that. What a clown show. All right, one more thing from the debate, and it's regarding Bernie Sanders. All right, so Bernie Sanders, if you guys remember, he honeymooned in the Soviet Union. Okay, not when it was Russia, when it was the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, okay? And he told a reporter, unlike Trump, I do not have an affinity for autocrats or dictators. You've got to be kidding me. Well, he honeymooned there in 1988. He praised communist tyrant Fidel Castro in a 1985 interview. He signed a letter of support for Venezuelan Marxist dictator Hugo Chavez. And on Tuesday night, following his primary debate performance, Bernie Sanders told a reporter, unlike Trump, I do not have an affinity for autocrats or dictators, whether they are in Russia or Saudi Arabia. My sympathy is with democratic countries who believe in human rights, like the Soviet Union or Cuba. Wow, this guy is out of touch. Let's go ahead and take a listen.
You didn't speak too much about the relationship with the European Union. Donald Trump, it's, for instance, supporting Brexit. It doesn't. You want an EU weak. What's your position on that?
My position is that instead of antagonizing all of our traditional allies, instead of antagonizing countries that actually believe in democracy, we should work with them. And we are not, among other things, going to be able to solve the crisis in climate change unless the entire world works together. We're not going to deal with the issue of the wealthy and large corporations stashing trillions of dollars in tax havens unless the entire world works together. So unlike Trump, I do not have an affinity for autocrats or dictators, whether they're in Russia or Saudi Arabia. My sympathy is with democratic countries who believe in human rights.
All right. I don't think that any of the countries that Bernie Sanders supported or visited in this article would count as democratic countries, no matter if they have democratic in their name or not. Just because it says it does not make it so. Bernie Sanders' wife, Jill, she got noticeably uncomfortable there when he went to that line. And I also love how Bernie Sanders diverted to climate change when it came to answering a hard question. Always deflect and go to climate change or go to race relations, something like that. Let's talk about reparations, guys. We're not here to talk about the Brexit. We're here to talk about race relations. We're here to talk about reparations. All right, so moving on. All right, and the Democrats continue to just fail at everything they try. They can't set up the president, they can't overthrow a democratically elected government, and they can't get themselves elected to save the day. MSNBC just blew the whistle last night after they exposed that post-debate poll found only around 27% of voters support the Democrats' open borders initiative, free healthcare, and reparations agenda. MSNBC asked voters on Tuesday after the first CNN Democratic presidential debate what they thought about the Democratic platform for 2020. What they found was that a vast majority of Americans reject their insanity. Only around 27% of Americans agree with Democrats on Medicare for all, decriminalizing border crossings, free healthcare for illegals, and reparations. Thank God. Americans are not buying into their crazy positions. What a freak show. Okay, guys, let's take a look at the clip.
Steve Kornacki standing by at the board with how the numbers may back up what we saw tonight.
Yeah, interesting, that dynamic you're talking about, sort of the moderate candidates going after Warren, going after Sanders, and even sounding that alarm potentially about electability. We've got some new data that's out recently that measures some of these issues that came up, where Democratic voters are, the folks who are going to vote in the primary versus where general election voters are. There are some interesting divides here. This question of Medicare for all without private insurance. That was a major part of this debate tonight. You see Democratic voters, more than 2-to-1 support this. 64% support, 31% oppose. Ask the same question to all Americans. General election voters, the folks who vote in November, very different story. 41% say it's a good idea. A majority, 54%, say it's a bad idea. How about this one? How about decriminalizing border crossings? That obviously came up again tonight, as it did the first debate. Democrats are split on this question. 45 support, 47 oppose. How about all voters, general election voters? Overwhelming opposition on that, 27-66. Another issue you heard about, this is national health insurance. Should there be a program that makes it available to undocumented immigrants? Again, among Democrats, basically 2-to-1 support for that proposition, 60-32. Among general election voters, complete opposite. And one more that came up late in the night, that question of reparations payments amongst Democrats, 46 support, 40% say bad idea. Among all voters, again, 27-62. So you see those sort of moderate candidates. This is what they're trying to express on that stage. But when the energy on the Democratic side is somewhere else, that's the power behind those comebacks that you heard from Warren and Sanders.
Steve Kornacki.
What you just saw was evidence to say that the Democrats have no hope of winning in the 2020 general election. Yes, among Democrat primary voters, the majority of their platform is really strong. But when you get to the primary election, when you get to the general election, the majority of voters do not think the Democrats have any good ideas. The vast majority of people in the United States disagree with the Democratic platform. And this spells absolute doom and destruction for the Democrats come 2020. President Trump will win again in a landslide, and this is just so incredible to watch. They are eating each other alive, and they are destroying and eroding any type of lead that they may have thought they had over each other, and is certainly over President Trump. No lead exists. Well, new documents show that FBI agents went to James Comey's home to retrieve classified memos, and Comey told agents 2 memos were missing. Conservative watchdog group Judicial Watch announced Wednesday it obtained 6 pages of records from the FBI showing that 1 month after FBI Director James Comey was fired by Trump, FBI agents visited Comey's home to retrieve 4 Trump memos as evidence. The agents showed up to Comey's home to collect the evidence in June, and one of his memos was written on June 6th, nearly a full month after he was fired on May 9th. The memos retrieved by FBI agents on June 7th, 2017 were dated February 14th, March 30th, April 11th, and one is dated last night at 6:30 p.m. The FBI docs also revealed that Comey recalled to agents that he wrote 2 other memos after he spoke with Trump that he claimed were missing. According to Comey, one of the missing memos was emailed to Rybicki and McCabe, and Judicial Watch also received a newly declassified FBI document dated June 16, 2017, in which FBI agents described Comey telling them that he had written 2 additional Trump meeting memos that he could no longer find. Former FBI Director James Comey was interviewed at his residence at Redacted. This interview was scheduled in advance and for the purpose of providing certain classified memos to Comey for review. After being advised of the identity of the interviewing agents and the nature of the interview, Comey provided the following information. After reviewing the memos, Comey spontaneously stated, to the best of his recollection, 2 were missing. After reviewing the memos, Comey spontaneously stated, to the best of his recollection, 2 were missing. In the first occurrence, Comey said at an unknown date and time between January 7th, 2017, which Comey believed was the date of his briefing at Trump Tower, and Trump's inauguration on January 20th, 2017, Comey received a call from the president-elect Donald J. Trump. The originating telephone number may have had a New York area code. Following the telephone conversation, Comey drafted and emailed a memo to James Rabicki and FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe. In the second instance, Comey was on his way to an FBI leadership conference in Leesburg, Virginia on March 9th, when he was diverted to Liberty Crossing to respond to a request from Trump to contact him. Comey contacted Trump from Liberty Crossing on a top-secret telephone line, and the conversation was all business and related to Redacted. Comey is less sure he drafted a memo for his conversation, but if he did, he may have sent it to the FBI's top-secret network. It is important to note, the FBI visit on June 7th took place the day before Comey admitted leaking the Trump memos to his friend, turned lawyer, turned unpaid FBI official, Daniel Richman, who then leaked the contents of the memos to the New York Times. I asked a friend of mine to share the content of the memos with a reporter for the New York Times. I asked him to because I thought that might prompt the appointment of a special counsel, Comey said before the Senate Intelligence Committee on June 8, 2017. The New York Times published a report on May 16, 2017, based on Comey's memo related to his conversation with Trump about General Flynn, and the next day, Mueller was appointed as special counsel. Although reports say 4 out of 7 memos Comey wrote stemming from 9 conversations he had with Trump were considered classified, experts familiar with the documents argue that all of the memos contain classified information. These extraordinary FBI docs further confirm that James Comey should never have had FBI files on President Trump at his home, and that the FBI failed to secure and protect these private and classified files, stated Judicial Watch President Tom Fitton. Mr. Comey's illegal leaking of these files as part of his vendetta against President Trump, directly resulting in the corrupt appointment of Robert Mueller, ought to be the subject of a criminal investigation. And right now, I believe that that is the subject of a criminal investigation, and that is being taken care of in the DOJ under the purview of Attorney General William Barr, and whichever U.S. attorney he decides should be the one to look a little deeper into it. Now, we have next, and a non-post from the board, getting into the idea of the creation of the special counsel and General Flynn's part to play in it. All right, here from Methods, found this morning. It says Flynn knew exactly what he was doing when he met with the FBI without an attorney, without having a record of the conversation by a court reporter or notes. Strzok could purposely lie about testimony given by Flynn with no proof the claim was true or false. This helped to build the case against Trump to seek appointment of special counsel. Wasn't Flynn under FISA surveillance? Everyone has a cell phone, right? Why is Flynn's attorney seeking security clearance? Is there a recording of the real conversation between Flynn and the FBI interviewers? Would this be the exculpatory evidence necessary for the dominoes to start falling? Method says he thinks this anon is onto something, and I do too. Flynn definitely had a FISA on him, and that would mean that they would have been able to listen in and have the recording of exactly what took place. So if they can get that recording, then they will absolutely have the exculpatory evidence that is necessary to prove that Flynn did not lie in that interview, despite having the fact of these recordings on paper, the 302s, stating that they did not think Flynn lied in the first place. So we go back to the original piece right here, the actual recording of Flynn and Strzok and whoever was with him at that time, and we will certainly have our answer. All right, big news coming out of the L.A. Department of Children and Family Services. Whistleblower evidence is claiming major corruption at Los Angeles County CPS. In connection with a lawsuit for child custody, a former employee of the Los Angeles County Department of Children and Family Services asserts in a July 2019 affidavit obtained by the Epoch Times that the agency falsifies evidence to justify taking children from their parents. In addition, a DCFS worker alleges that the department interfered in the case by removing the caseworker's notes from her report in the custody case, according to text messages and court transcripts obtained by the Epoch Times. Dr. Susan Spell, alongside with 18-year-old son Nicholas, filed a $750 million lawsuit July 30th against the County of Los Angeles and individual social workers. I want to bring awareness. This is the epitome of corruption and abuse of power. I have to pay to see my children, Spell told the Epoch Times, noting that the late social worker Barbara Smith, who worked on her case, had 8 pages of notes removed from her report by a supervisor, which were later recovered at least in part. In court, my attorney asked for it to be produced. They never produced all of those pages. Spell has also filed a writ of habeas corpus to return her children to her. Susan is a physician in LA County. She went to pick up her kids from school one day only to find that DCFS removed them, Spell's lawyer Stephen Lamont told the Epoch Times. DCFS convinced the school they had a warrant. They did not have a warrant. They tried to get a warrant, but it was denied. They said there was a restraining order against Dr. Spell, but that never existed. They gave the 4 kids to a non-biological stepfather, Lamont said. She's been fighting these issues for at least 3 years. They didn't have a warrant to remove the kids from school, so that's a 14th Amendment violation. Spell, who went to Harvard Medical School, said that she had 4 children with a sperm donor. 3 of those children, 2 14-year-old twin girls and a 9-year-old son, are now with Brian Evans, Spell's plastic surgeon ex-husband, but Spell's 18-year-old son is back with her. Spell accused her ex-husband of abuse of the children, but DCFS continually labeled claims against her husband unfounded. Spell's lawsuit states that her husband was a DCFS expert witness for 10 years, and that one of her children identified a DCFS worker as her husband's girlfriend. The caseworker admitted in a court proceeding that she spent private time in the husband's bedroom, but denied a relationship of a sexual or romantic nature. Requests for comment from this report were made to Spell's former husband at his listed place of employment and on his business website. Juana Aguilera of the DCFS Office of Public Affairs emailed to say that DCFS was prohibited by state law from comment on possible involvement with families, as we are prohibited by state law from breaching confidentiality. Now, the declaration of Melinda Murphy, a former DCFS employee, and text messages from the late Barbara Smith, a caseworker in the Spell case, sheds new light on the agency's tactics. Melinda Murphy told the Epoch Times that she worked at DCFS for just shy of 10 years in various capacities and observed misconduct. If one social worker didn't like another, she would recommend the kids would not go home, Murphy told the Epoch Times. A supervisor would say, "We are never sending these kids home no matter what. That's not the way it was supposed to be done." I would say 30% of all cases were marked by departmental or personal or political bias. Melinda Murphy testifies in her affidavit in the Spell case that she was being trained as a supervising children's social worker at the Los Angeles County DCFS, from which she has resigned. Murphy said in her affidavit that her trainer told her and others on the first day of training, "We should be ashamed of what we have done to some of the families that we have sworn to serve. During my training, my observations, and in my work experiences, I learned that the DCFS does not have a mechanism for backing down and has a tendency, even if the parent is innocent, to make them appear guilty in some way, and that includes perjuring testimony, falsifying reports, and fabricating evidence to justify taking children," Murphy said. On or around April 15, 2016, I spoke exclusively to Barbara Smith, a social worker in case DK02119 involving Susan's children. She stated that she planned to testify about the truth despite her suffering reprisal. Ms. Smith disclosed that her documentation in the DCF file was deleted regarding her questioning the children's safety with Brian Evans, the father, Murphy said in her affidavit. And Murphy signed that affidavit on July 10, 2019. Now, mother Susan Spell's text messages with Barbara Smith, the late DCFS worker, detail Smith's belief that the department interfered in the case and showed bias against Spell. Yes, they probably deleted my notes, social worker Barbara Smith says in the text messages, which is illegal. I had 8 pages of notes. She lied. Unacceptable behavior, and she should be reported to internal affairs. She should be investigated, Smith says of Adrienne Hawkins, a supervising children's social worker whom Lamont identifies as the official who deleted Smith's notes. Smells like a cover-up to me, Smith said. Only West LA info is getting into court, it seems. These workers are biased against you, and that's not fair to you to keep asking them to get the case out of West LA, Smith tells Spell. Smith testified in Los Angeles Superior Court in 2016 that 8 pages of her notes were removed from her report after she gave it to a supervisor to send to the regional office, and that caused her concern, according to court transcripts, which show that approximately 7 pages of the notes were recovered and presented as evidence in that court proceeding. Spell's son, Nicholas Evans, made a declaration presented as an exhibit in Spell's habeas corpus case in which Nicholas stated, "My minors' counsel heard my request to testify on Adrienne Hawkins, social worker, and stepfather Brian lying about my mother, bragging that she will mark all of my siblings and my reports of Brian's bruises as false. I gave minors' counsel a letter that I wrote to the judge because it was vital that he know that I heard Adrienne and Brian's plan to tell lies on my mother to take us from her. I felt helpless and suicidal over Adrienne not protecting us from Brian. She told lies that we made up his abuse to stop other social workers, police, and the judges from protecting us too," Nicholas Evans said in his declaration. They extorted her, Spell's lawyer Lamont says, referring to Spell's legal fees from her time using a court-appointed lawyer. It's a racketeering scheme. They claim that if you don't pay this $550,000 that you will never see your kids again. That money goes to fund the enterprise. It's consistent in all the cases where the parent has a good deal of money. Wow, guys, this was just broken by Patrick Howley of the Epic Times. I can't say that I'm surprised about this. This sounds very, very familiar. If you'll remember the case that we just spoke about a couple weeks ago, we had Cindy Absug on and Rachel as well. Rachel actually beat the DCF system. And she actually took them to court and won a large settlement. But she had money to take them to court. Unfortunately, many parents are not in a position to fund themselves with a large lawyer for all of these big legal bills, and they end up finding themselves with their kids simply taken away from them. We're going to have some updates on Cindy's case this weekend. Hopefully it's some good news. In the meantime, unfortunately, we're just going to have to keep praying for all of these children and hope that finally this could be the case that brings down the corrupt Department of Children and Family Services. Now, Methods noticed this on Twitter earlier today. Since we know climate change is nonsense and used as a cover, check out who all is dipping out of the United States right now. Looks like A-list celebrities are joining Google executives in Italy for some type of climate change talk. And the Gateway Pundit titles it Hypocrisy. Limousine liberals flock to posh Italian resort in private jets and mega yachts to talk climate change. And I would also like to point out who else is there right now but the Democrats, Pelosi and the Democrats, as well as El Chapo's wife. Very strange they'd all be meeting in the exact same place. Well, they're at it again. A slew of A-list celebrities have flocked to Sicily, Italy on private jets and massive yachts to discuss the woes of global warming caused, they say, by things like private jets and massive yachts. The hypocrisy. Imagine. The founders of Google invited a throng of the rich and famous, including former President Obama, Prince Harry, actor Leonardo DiCaprio, and singer Katy Perry for a huge party they've dubbed Google Camp. The 3-day event will focus on fighting climate change, though it's unknown how much time the attendees will spend discussing their own effect on the environment, such as the scores of private jets they arrived in and the mega yachts many have been staying on, reports the New York Post. Everything is about global warming. That is the major topic this year, a source told the Post. The cost of the extravaganza? $20 million. According to the Italian press, at least 114 private jets will land at the Palermo airport. The Post crunched the numbers and found that 114 flights from Los Angeles to Palermo, Italy, where camp guests landed, would spew an estimated 100,000 kilograms of carbon dioxide into the air. Google Camp is meant to be a place where influential people get together to discuss how to make the world better, one regular attendee told the Post. There will likely be discussions about online privacy, politics, human rights, and of course, the environment, which makes it highly ironic that this event requires 114 private jets to happen, they said. Attendees pay for their own travel to Sicily, but then Google foots the bill for everything at the opulent Verdura Resort, which reportedly features 2 golf courses and where rooms start at $903 a night. Other stars attending the mega party include Perry's fiancé Orlando Bloom, singer Harry Styles, actor Bradley Cooper, singer Nick Jonas, actor Priyanka Chopra, TV personality Gayle King, Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg, designer Diane von Furstenberg, and media mogul Barry Diller. Furstenberg and Diller reportedly arrived with their $200 million yacht EOS. DreamWorks founder David Geffen, and some might say a very evil person, is said to have given Perry and Bloom a lift to the event on his $400 million yacht Rising Sun, Fox News reported. Said the Post, guests dine among ancient temples and are treated to performances by the likes of Sting, Elton John, and Coldplay's Chris Martin before retiring to their suites at Verdura Resort. Oh, hypocrisy is abound in this world, you guys. Incredible to watch, and just all the more frustrating when you see the way that they are trying to condemn us, little old us, just the average day everyman, for pumping out CO2 into the atmosphere when people like these guys are the ones really doing it. And I just like to comment and say that the idea that carbon dioxide is bad for our atmosphere is completely ludicrous. There is pollution, and there is climate change, which occurs naturally, and then there is the carbon footprint of an individual. Carbon dioxide is what we breathe out when we respirate. Do you know what plants breathe in? Carbon dioxide. The more we breathe, the more plants breathe, the more oxygen is cleaned, the less carbon dioxide is in the air. It is not about carbon dioxide. The reason they are focusing on carbon dioxide is because if they can tax a single person in every single country just for breathing, imagine the giant slush funds they will take in based upon that one silly little lie. All right, folks, I think that is all that I have for you today. I want to thank everyone for joining me. As always, this has been Red Pill 78. I am the corruption detector, and this was your Red Pill News. Good luck, everyone, and God bless.